Good evening and welcome to the August 5th Select Board meeting for the town of Ashland. We have just come out of executive session and we are now going into open session. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are utilizing the Zoom conference platform to conduct our meeting, and all board and committee members are participating remotely. The goal is to maintain the spirit of the open meeting law, providing access and transparency to all proceedings. When appropriate, efforts will be made to allow for public participation through the Zoom platform. This meeting is also being broadcast live and is being taped by the good folks at WACA-TV, as well as live streamed on Facebook. Your patience with any technical difficulties is appreciated as we conduct meetings in this now not new way, as we've been doing it for now almost for 3 months. The Ashland Select Board meeting is called to order, and a roll call attendance from the board members. Kinsman,
Here.
Mignani,
Here.
Mitchell,
Here.
and Rob is not joining us this evening, unfortunately, and Greaves is here. Please, we asked that if you'd like to be recognized during citizens' participation, that you utilize the raise hand function, and Jen Ball will be managing the people to speak. I'll let her know who I'd like to go next. We will then unmute you. And also at the end of citizens participation, we will unmute everybody just in case someone either didn't get their hand raised or didn't get to speak. So we are starting with citizens participation this evening. So down over under the list of the participants, it does have the little button, hit the raise hand button, and we will recognize you. Everyone is now is muted, and we will unmute as people raise their hands. This is the opportunity to speak for various things on our agenda. So if anyone wants to speak.
So Mark is, yeah, I'm going to unmute.
Okay, unmute Mark. Go ahead. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Mark Lasoni. I would like to say there was no very bad damage here at the storm at our house. Me and my dad survived it, and just had small little things, nothing big.
Good.
But my main thing is that the governor yesterday announced that Framingham had a new test site at Keith Tech.
Correct.
I just want to know through the town manager, you're a Framingham resident, right?
Currently, yes.
And the school's about to open, and you got a daughter, right?
Currently, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that through you and your daughter's sake, and I know that you know Kitty Mahoney, right?
Yes.
And Kitty Mahoney knows Mark Oram, right?
That's correct.
Why can't Framingham and Ashland, which borders Framingham in 3 different areas, border up with Framingham and Ashland to border up to co-op together?
Well, Mark, that might actually be in the wings. Now, something.
And if I'm correct, you don't have to be a Framingham resident to go use the Framingham testing
According to
site.
the paper, you have to be. You have to be a registered Framingham person. It was in the paper today.
Well, I've heard different accounts. Mark,
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a larger
Well, the one that's at Keith Tech, the one that got started today.
Yeah, the free one at Keith Tech.
Mark, my daughter, who is not a Framingham resident, went there.
Okay, and then you and Michael can kind of combine the answers with me. How did that go? And if it can be open to Metro West, why not? If it can't be, and Chuck, how did you come up with that explanation right there?
She went, got tested. That's all I know.
Okay, back to you, Mike. Back to you, town manager. You and your daughter from here resident. It's a certain hours, but not every day, same hours, and it's gonna be right around the circle of the school itself. That's driveway, right?
Well, yes. So what we discovered today And actually, Sergeant Berman went out there to just kind of scout it out. It was very, very crowded. The cars lined up significantly, made its way through back roads and everything to back up. So certainly being taken advantage of. Obviously it's the first day of this, so I'm sure they will probably work out some of the kinks related to traffic and just the flow.
Now, can it be through email through the town for you, Mr. Town Manager, to Mr. Wrong and Kitty Mahoney to ask for if they can send over and have Ashland certain hours for other towns to come over?
I could certainly do that. It's probably more appropriate for the Board of Health and the health agent.
And that's what I was saying for Kitty Mahoney and Mr. Wong and Mark Oram. And KG's right there on board. I see him there. He just passed that on to the Board of Health, Diane and everybody.
Sure.
And Kitty Mahoney says coincide together. Because Ashland's not going to get a test site. And I know that the state Senate president won't do it for Ashland because it's not going to be on a school plus thing. So I'll leave that alone. But for him, like Keith Tech and to coincide, because we boarded 3 ways to Framingham, we can circle right around like the Indians with the wagons, and just hopefully it can take us in. As they take you and your daughter in.
Yeah, Mark, thank you, Mark, for those suggestions. I would say, Michael, if we could just double check with Mark Oram and reach out or to Karen or whoever's running that test site. Like I said, my understanding was it was available to Metro West, but I think we can double check that and then we can get that information shared, Mark.
Okay, then that would be all for now. You can rebuke me. I'll behave tonight.
I'm not going to rebuke you. Thank you for bringing that up and letting people know. Okay.
And then there's just one more hand. So Deb, I'm gonna unmute.
Okay.
I think you're unmuted.
Yep.
Hi. I just wanted to thank you all for your efforts to help stop Eversource from bringing another pipeline through town. And I also want to thank everybody involved. I don't know what's going to be announced, but I see on the agenda at 6:15 introduction to the Racial Equity Study Group. So I'm happy to hear about that and look forward to being a part as much as I can be.
Great. Thank you for that. I do want to let people know that this was just one step in regards to the land court, and the process is still going on. It's, it's not completely done. It's not, we're doing what we can, but the process is not over yet with Eversource. So that was just the first step.
Well, steps are important.
They are.
Thanks for all your work.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other hands raised? Okay. I don't see everyone here yet from the Introduction to Racial Equity Study Group. So I'd like to jump to the consent agenda. And if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda, the items on it, because you probably don't all have an agenda in front of you, is acceptance of minutes for July 1st, 2020 regular session minutes, accept the fiscal year 2020 state 911 support and incentive grant in the amount of $55,758 for the police department, and acceptance of the DHCD grant of $4,950.
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you. If I can get a second. Second, great. I got a motion from Steve Mitchell and a second from Joe Mignani. Roll call vote. Kinsman.
Aye.
Mignani.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, aye.
And Greaves, aye. Great. So that takes care of our consent agenda.
Just if I may be excused, there is a correction on that amount. It says 4,950,000, the item C. So make sure the agenda item corrects that.
Is it 4,950,000?
Item C.
Oh. Okay. I had it too far away from me. I thought it was a point. Thank you, KG.
Yeah, that's the
4,950,000.
That's the money for the micro enterprise grant.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Michael, who else are we waiting for from the Racial Equity Study Group introduction?
It looks like we're waiting for Makita, and I spoke with her earlier. And EJ Smithers is a part of this group as well. I'm not necessarily sure he's going to be able to get on the Zoom meeting tonight.
Okay. I'm going to move down to old new business. I think we should be able to do this in 5 minutes. Vote to sign and post the warrant for the September 1st, 2020 primary. Thoughts, comments on that? Michael, if you could just take us through it.
This is what the board needs to do for every primary. You have to vote and post it. The constable goes and posts it in the correct places.
Okay. If I can get a motion to approve, to sign and post the warrant for the September 1st, 2020 primary.
I'll make a motion to post the warrant for the September 1st election.
Okay, if I can get a second.
Second, and that would amend it to the state primary.
State
Yep.
primary. Thank you.
State primary. I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. Okay. And I see that Makita has joined us. Makita, we're a hair ahead of schedule. So I know. No one wanted to talk to us today for citizens participation.
I'll
So
talk with you today.
Great. So if you and KG are ready, Michael, why don't you do a short introduction of what this is, and then we'll jump in with Makita and KG.
Absolutely. Obviously, since the murder of George Floyd happened, that certainly brought to the forefront race relations in the United States. And it's caused a lot of communities, including Ashland, to kind of look internally about how we look at race and address race and how we feel about race. Makita reached out to me shortly after that happened. We had a very good conversation, a very raw conversation. And we both agreed that what we need to do is we need to hear from people of color and especially Black people of color in Ashland to get a sense of what they're feeling, what they're perceiving, what's happening to them. And we need to do that really in a systematic way. So a very small group grew organically, and I will let them introduce themselves. We have Makita Keegan here, who you've already recognized, and KG Nariana. We also have Rabbi Eric Gervis here, who's been probably one of our newer members in the community. And then also a young man, EJ Smithers, who is a recent graduate of Ashland High School and is also Black as well. And at this point in time, I would probably turn it over to Makita, then KG, and then the Rabbi to kind of give a little introduction about who they are and why this is important to them.
Okay, Makita?
Hi, folks. Can people hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Been plagued with technical problems all day. So hello, folks. My name is Makita Keegan. I've been an Ashland resident since 2003. I've been very active here in town in various capacities. But to echo what Michael said, the events of the death of George Floyd, I think there were a lot of issues that had come up for not just folks in Ashland and not just people of color in Ashland too, but really not just people in the United States, but folks all over the world worried about equality and equity issues. And so, I picked up the phone and spoke to Michael because, one of the things that being a person of color, being a Black person here in Ashland, you know, and speaking with other Black folks in Ashland, it's interesting to find out what their perceptions of the community are. But, you know, a lot of that information is anecdotal. You know, some folks say that they've had some pretty positive experiences here in town. Some folks say they've had some fairly negative experiences in town related to their race. One of the things that I think everyone, I hope, here on this call can agree is that, you know, Ashland, I think, strives to be a welcoming community for all. And one of the ways that, you know, we want to ensure, at least from our perspective, and I'll pass it over to some of the other folks who've been thinking about this, to ensure that is the case, and to identify some of the things that we're doing great, and maybe identify some things that we could do to ensure that we are a welcome and opening community for all, and more importantly, a truly equitable and fair community for everyone. You know, is really kind of taking a data-driven, systematic approach in looking at what those experiences are for people of color and white folks here in town around race, and around interactions. And because anecdotal, you know, information doesn't really help you get from point A to point B. So one of the things that this working group is striving towards is taking a real look at that, looking at some existing data, and also going out and collecting some data around that. You know, and through some of those like sound analytical practices, and I'll get into a little bit about that later, we really kind of hope to improve policy, reinforce policies that are working, improve other policies that really reflect that commitment to that open community that's free of racism and bias, and is free and welcoming to everyone. I'm speaking in some rather broad terms, but so I'll narrow that down a little bit. But I do want to have some of the other folks who are seeking to find a solution to this speak. But I will say this: I did share with Michael that, you know, we all, I think, want to tackle the issue of racism and bias and other issues, other diversity and equity issues, not just limited to race, but to ethnicity, to religion or gender differences. I don't think anyone here wants to see any group oppressed in that fashion. But the question is, how do we tackle it? And there are many different ways to approach it, but because it is generally a systemic problem, a systemic solution must be part of that approach, and a measured and an analytical solution must be part of that approach. So I'm going to pass the mic over to KG and let him talk a little bit more.
Okay, great. Thank you, Makita. KG?
Thank you for letting me speak here. I appreciate it. My name is KG Narayana. I reached and settled in Ashland in 2001. Sorry, not 2001. And then I've been part of this Ashland Indian group, as well as in the community. I spent a few years as a National Cultural Council member, and then on, Stephen Mitchell led me to get into the other committees like Conservation Commission, and then I also am on the Board of Health for the past 2 terms. And I've been looking at the inner workings of the town as well as the department that they work, so I get better exposure to what's happening here. And I believe that there are other people in my community and other communities who can definitely help the town and also expand the diversity that we bring in here as well as the others. So I suggest that we as groups should get into the volunteering for the town, so that way we understand what goes on inside. And that's one way to change for better. And I also think that the town employees and the school employees are the ones who have most of the interaction with the fellow staff members or the fellow town members. That's where we need to look for issues that may have come up and that they may not have risen up. So that, I feel, is a good place to look for data. And then for that, we need full transparency in terms of what data is available, what is providable in terms of what's not restricted because of privacy. So that's where I think we should move forward and then study more and bring results out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Michael?
I'll turn the mic over to Rabbi Gerbs.
Okay.
So good evening, everybody. I am literally, as Michael said, the new kid on the block. It was just over a year ago that my wife and I, we moved with our children to the Commonwealth in 1999. And I served as a rabbi at a congregation in Newton for 18 years plus, and then left the active pulpit rabbinate. And a little over a year ago, we chose a new home to downsize, which put us right on the Ashland-Sherburne border. And in November of last year, we moved into the community. And as part of getting ready to move to Ashland, I did some searching around and discovered there's a synagogue in Ashland. I said, great, we'll have a community to belong to. I took about 12 minutes and I found out they don't have a rabbi. Then they found out I was a rabbi. And about 12 minutes later, I was their rabbi. So Shalom, which is a very well-kept secret in Ashland because we don't have a physical space. We rent various spaces. We hold our Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services usually at the Federated Church. And we use the community center for our Friday evening services. And we use the middle school for our school classes. And we kind of live. And most of the members, there are about 40 households, are Ashland residents. One or two are just outside of the community. And what you may not know is Shari Shalom will celebrate its 25th anniversary this year. So they've been around as a part of the community, and I'm at the beginning of my second year. So when Michael reached out to me and asked if I would join this small group to think over the course of this summer, in light of the events that have kind of been torturing and challenging and upsetting to us all, I immediately said yes. And so I'm going to leave what Makita and KG have said already because they know the community, but I am thrilled to be part of this community and to be part of this effort, and God willing, one day to get to meet you all soon in person as opposed to on the Hollywood squares.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for being here and speaking to us about this. And thank you, Makita, for reaching out to Michael and coordinating this. It is something that has been on everyone's mind. And how can we do this here in Ashland? And I guess my question to the three of you is, what do you see as the next steps? And how can we as the select board work to support that and help move this process forward? Because I see it as a process. We're going to, based on your data, we're going to identify things, and then we're going to want to move forward with that. So that's my question back.
And I'm so glad that you're identifying it as a process, because that's exactly what it is, Yolanda. And so, yes, really looking forward to working not just with the select board, but with our fellow Ashland residents on this very important issue. So what are our next steps? Well, the first next step for us to do is to identify basically the kind of data, identify existing data, and to identify the data that we want to collect and how we want to do it. We have reached out to some academic folks because, you know, we're not just going to kind of kick up a survey or kind of figure out how to do interviews on our own, although there are quite a few people who are in the committee who are well qualified to do so. But I'm proud to say that the Assistant Town Manager, Jen Ball, myself have connections at Northeastern University and Center of Race and Justice, and there may be a possibility for some assistance from them in helping us to shape how we do our data collection and identify what those next steps and how that collection, how that data collection occurs and how it is analyzed. You know, the second piece is, you know, the second piece is actually really critical because a lot of towns and communities, whenever a flare up happens like this, it's like, well, we're going to put a blue ribbon commission together and we're going to look at the issue, we're going to study it, and they've produced this beautiful report. And then they put it on a shelf somewhere and it gathers dust for, you know, ever and ever and amen. So I think that Ashland has a unique opportunity to be a leader in this space because, quite frankly, what we'll do with that information is actually take a look at that, analyze it, and look for actionable steps as a town. And that's where a select board is going to be really helpful in helping us identify that, where we can make change to, again, make sure that we have an opening and welcome community for all of our residents, but particularly to kind of hone in on some of those experiences with people of color and other folks. So that's the second step. And then the third step is implementation, like how do we actually do that? And then the fourth step is maintenance. So, I think with that kind of model, and you'll have to excuse me, I come from a web engineering background, among other things, but I kind of see things in those sort of, kind of procedural steps. You do some discovery, you build, you implement, then you do maintenance. So it's an iterative process. It's an ongoing process.
Yes.
And so most cities and towns, or rather most towns in Massachusetts, they don't look like, Boston. They don't look like my venerable hometown of Newton, Massachusetts. Shout out Rabbi Eric. They don't look like, they look like us in size and scope and population. So we have a real opportunity to put together a model, perhaps, that other towns could follow, and we can really lead in this space. So that's sort of kind of from a larger point of view, where we in the community kind of see things going. And I would invite anyone else to kind of pipe in and fly. Yes, Steve, to expand upon that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the board? Steve?
So first off, welcome to Ashland, Rabbi. As the saying goes, timing is everything, right? So, but again, I just want to comment, Makita, KG, and the Rabbi, how important this work is, and I thank you for starting this process, and I'll acknowledge the term that Yolanda used, because this is a process that we need to be engaged in for forever, as far as I can see. Every meeting we review our priority projects. And to me, this is like a priority above our priority projects. So, so thank you for getting this started. And I'm sure the board is going to be as engaged as you need us to be.
Definitely. Good.
Yolanda,
Joe? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I go along with what Steve has just expressed, and I appreciate the efforts of all of you who gotten involved with this equity study group. My question would be, if there are other citizens who are interested in becoming participants and eager to help this group, who should they contact, and is there a process they need to go through to become part of this group? Because I think that there are a number of groups that are out there. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, we said that Ashland was a community, and we encouraged everybody to become part of that community, and that included the youth, senior citizens, and all sorts of genders and nationalities as a part of this. And I think, and Makita, you said it very, very nicely, that it's just not race, it's other derogatory things that have happened to many other people in many other different circumstances. So how do we get those folks involved too? Because I'm sure their stories need to be told as well and be part of this collective healing process. And I agree with Steve. This is the starting point, and it doesn't end. It's a continuation. It's a process that'll never, ever end.
I think Michael put this group together. I think he may be a central source for receiving information from people who want to be part of it.
Yeah, I think KG brings up a good point. I think, each of the people involved in this committee have the ability to outreach to people that we normally do not hear from. And that's why they were so important as part of this. I think there will obviously be an opportunity for direct conversations. I think one of the things that we're doing is we're establishing how we're going to do this academically. We want to do this scientifically. We probably want to have essentially, I don't know how to say it right, Jen and Makita could certainly say this better than me, but we don't want to necessarily be influenced unnecessarily so. we want to kind of have some kind of control. So I think we will be reaching out to people as much as they will be reaching out to us. But if people feel compelled to ask more about this, about this group and our work, I could certainly be the point of contact, but probably going to be other people that will be other members of the group that will be having those conversations.
Okay, there may be people out there that feel that there's an injustice out there that they want to make sure is brought to light. And 3 individuals, that's a lot to bear for that burden to do that research. The more the merrier, as I look at it that way. We're a community of over close to 18,000 people, and I'm sure that there's not one that hasn't had a situation that they felt an injustice, and it may have happened to them, no matter what their race is, no matter what their religion may be, or their ethnic backgrounds. So
I agree with you. You couldn't agree with you more, Joe. And that's why this data collection piece is so critical. To loop back to what Michael said, we have to get those stories, but we want to make sure that we're collecting them in a way that, doesn't convey bias, that we're doing it as scientifically as possible. So, there's going to be an opportunity for those voices to be heard. And,
Okay.
I don't want to, and that's why we're being so academic about it. We want to make sure that it is inclusive, but also gathers that information, and it's kind of free from bias in the analysis and the data collection piece, which is why we're relying on our academic partners. And there may be some other academic partners that we may be trying to pull into the mix as well, but we're exploring who we can partner with at this time to ensure that's the case.
Sounds good.
And I know
Joe-
that, hold
Sorry.
on, MAPC is offering some services and some grants and different things to help with some of this. And they have an organization, and I don't have the name off the top of my head, that they are working with to look at some of this as well. So I can find that and get it to Michael and get it to you, Makita, because they might be doing some of the academic data research as well, that if we could find different ways to do it, it would be helpful.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So if we expect the town to be inclusive, we would definitely this committee also will be inclusive on everybody. So down the line, I'm sure if we need more, we will definitely augment more people that we need, and then expand on it. Right now, we're still in the initial stage where we're assembling everything together.
Okay, Brandy, do you have any comments? And then we're going to move on.
Sure. So I would also like to add my thanks for taking action on this, because I think it's important not just to say we want to be an inclusive community, but really to take action, which I think this is that is exactly what this is all about. And I applaud this project. I think this is going to be a good process for Ashland. And to Joe's point, I as Makita was kind of going through her framework for this, I also see this as, there's going to be points in time where the group will be presenting what they're finding to the community for feedback. So I think that there will be opportunities. That's kind of how I'm envisioning it. So I think that there will be opportunities for other people to offer up their voices, but I do think that the academic process is a good one. My question is, do you have an initial time frame as to what the data collection is going to look like, and that step of the process?
I'm glad you asked. The short answer is as soon as humanly possible. So we've already taken steps in, the first piece is identifying existing data sources and also identifying how that data collection can be done. So we've already started on that piece. And at this particular stage, we are identifying those two pieces. We'd like to try to get something done as quickly as possible. I don't want to name a date or timeline. I think as soon as we scope this out a little bit more, we'll be able to put some timeline around it. And I will say that we are working diligently over the next few weeks to try to do that in the next month or so. But we know that we don't have the luxury of time. This is not something that we can just sort of stretch out and expect like a year from now. We should not be sitting up here in this meeting talking about how we're going to get started. So I'm sorry to be less than specific with you, Brandy, but that we do know that time is of the essence, but we are assembling those parts. And once we can scope that out, we can better identify timeline. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, it may also be useful for the members of the board to understand that Michael's initial outreach to all of us came in mid-June. So this process is not yet 2 months old. We've only had a handful, and if we weren't living in the reality that we're living in, which we're all experiencing right now, maybe more progress would have been achievable, even though it's the summer. So, but Makita is right. This is not a process. We're doing this for our community, not so we can say, look what we did. And
Right.
I think it's really important, and it's vital for the future of all the residents of our community. And as Makita said, hopefully to be a model.
Great.
Looking forward to seeing it happen.
Yes. So I want to thank you, Eric and Makita and KG again for stepping forward and offering this. And then thank you to Jen and Michael for taking their input and their ideas and moving this project forward and this process forward. And as you said, Makita, there is a little bit of urgency that we get some information and move things forward, but we will leave it to you guys and Michael to determine when you want to come back to us, and then when we can help you reach out to the rest of the community and have something that we can work with.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
folks.
you.
Great.
Thank you.
Moving on, next item on our agenda is a presentation by Matt Marshquest, and it is an update on the net zero plan. Jen, are you going to share the presentation, or is Matt going to?
I think I can allow Matt to.
Okay, we can let Matt share his screen. Good evening, Matt. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. So I'm going to do a kind of a brief update on the progress on net zero. Let me see if I can just share this screen.
I like that word.
Brief.
Brief.
There's a lot of information, but I will try to go through it quickly. Just bear with me a sec while this thing loads up. So I want to thank the Select Board for the opportunity to speak here. And thank you for your support of net zero throughout this time period that we've been working on this. Also, I noticed that we have Eversource on the agenda, so I want to thank you for your advocacy and due diligence on that, and thank even the Conservation Commission as well. There have been a lot of people in town involved in that, and it's a really important project. We think a lot about fossil fuels, and so that project, we kind of have an opinion about that project on the Sustainability Committee, and we are glad that the town is doing that due diligence. So let me just say, this presentation was put together. It was kind of a group effort, but Ashwin Radhachandani did a lot of the work and had some good input from members of the committee on it. He's a better presenter than I, but I'm the one who's doing it today, so sorry for that. So as a review, the town approved a strong net zero resolution at last fall's town meeting, targeting net zero emissions townwide by 2040. One of the first steps we've taken to get there is the creation of a greenhouse gas inventory, which helps us to measure our baseline of emissions in town and identify areas of greatest impact. We've also been researching potential methods of reducing those emissions, which will make up the net zero plan. And based on what we have learned so far, engagement with residents and businesses will be a key component of the plan. Of course, there are some new challenges to doing this during this time period, which force us to be a bit creative. So let me just go through. The first thing we'll review is the data. A greenhouse gas inventory is an important step as it allows us to document where our emissions are coming from and track our performance over time. Creating a greenhouse gas inventory is not easy, but we're fortunate to benefit from work done by the MAPC, Massachusetts Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They recently completed a greenhouse gas inventory tool which includes local emissions factors specific to Massachusetts, as well as census data sets for housing and vehicles. And this basically makes it a lot easier for towns to do this on their own. Other towns have hired consultants to help them with this work. Being able to utilize this tool gave us a good start, which is directionally accurate enough for our town's purposes without being kind of perfect. Even so, there was a fair amount of work to do to pull together the specific data. So I wanted to thank Rob Muhlenbeek and Mark Moniz from the committee, as well as Frank Nakashian, our sustainability coordinator, for their help in the data collection and verification. So looking at the data, this chart shows community-wide emissions. You can see that the majority of these break down into stationary energy or buildings, 56.6%, and transportation at 42.8%. We don't have quite as much public transportation out here in the suburbs, so this is a little higher than, say, compared with Boston, where that transportation number would be lower. Residential waste contributes 0.5% to our greenhouse gas emissions, and these are things like incineration, as well as other aspects of the waste process. There are some gaps in the data, including waste from commercial dumpsters and large complexes which use private trash services. We are also not able to track emissions relating to consumption at this time. So the emissions created from residents buying products are not part of this inventory yet. Looking at the numbers by subsector, we can see that the majority of emissions, 75%, are from the residential buildings and passenger vehicles. Commercial operations make up about 20% of total emissions, and municipal operations and buildings are a smaller portion, about 2.5% of the total, although they do have a significant presence in the public conversation around net zero and are pretty important. One piece that we're still working on is construction, and that may have some impact as well. We're still trying to nail down the numbers on that. Within our buildings, oil and gas contribute 69% of our total buildings emissions. Most of our houses and buildings use natural gas or oil for heat. The overall trend with those fuels is that we are reducing the number of homes that heat with oil and adding new natural gas and electric heated homes. But to reach net zero, we really need to prioritize renewable sources for energy. So what if we could kind of flip a switch and transform the way we use energy in town? If we could switch all buildings that are heated with natural gas to air source heat pumps, we'd reduce our townwide emissions by about 5%. If we did the same thing for oil, we'd save another 5%. And that just kind of shows that oil has a pretty significant impact in terms of emissions, because there are many fewer houses with oil heat. If we replaced all of the vehicles in town with EVs, we could save about 30%. And all of this is based on the current electric grid, which right now in Massachusetts has 14.3% non-emitting or renewable sources as of 2017. So why I mention that is because the state currently has emissions mandates for utility companies, which require an increasing percentage of our electricity to be provided by renewables. So that number of renewable is slated to go up over time. And there are some discussions at the state and federal level about new, more aggressive targets, such as 100% renewable electricity by 2035. That's part of the main platform of one of the presidential candidates right now. Probably easy to guess which one. On the right, you can see what the emissions reduction would be if we made these changes, combined with 100% renewable grid. And that gets us pretty close to net zero. Cost is obviously a limiting factor for these types of changes, although it is important to note that the cost of these technologies is coming down. So if you have oil heat, if you're replacing an oil furnace, you'll actually save money by switching to air source heat pumps right now. If you have natural gas, it's pretty low, but it's actually comparable. It's not far off from air source heat pumps. So, and electric cars obviously are kind of a luxury item right now, but the price of those has been trending downward as well. So there are a lot of actions we can take to kind of drive that change that we want to see in the town. So our committee, as part of this planning process, we're starting to develop the list of strategies and measures that we can use and trying to kind of prioritize those. So in the left column, over the next 6 to 12 months, there are many things that we can do almost immediately with little cost, such as promoting mass save incentives and the class 1 rec option in our energy aggregation contract, which will be available for residents to choose in the new year. In the middle column are larger scale projects and policies which require time to plan and implement, such as zoning to incentivize electric heating and net zero buildings, or the ability to track consumption-based emissions. Then on the right side in the long-term column are some things which we really need to do, but may seem hard to achieve right now. And we had some discussion around these in the committee, but I think everyone agrees that we do need to think big to tackle climate change by doing things like creating disincentives for houses that don't have sustainability features, requiring sustainability disclosures, energy disclosures at the sale of a home, redesigning our roadways to encourage pedestrian traffic instead of vehicles. All of these options do need to be on the table when we think about how to get to net zero by 2050 or 2040 in our case. These may seem daunting, but they are the types of actions that the moment demands. And what is possible can change quite a bit with persistent and committed action. Certainly we've seen that with things like Eversource, where I don't know if I would have thought we could prevail in land court against them a year ago. And the debate about climate change has definitely shifted quite a bit. So going on, a key part of this is community engagement. We need to do research, we need to conduct outreach and education. We need to share the inventory findings, solicit input on the initiatives, and communicate the plan. In the current crisis, we know that there are certain residents and business owners who will not be able to focus on net zero efforts at the moment. Social distancing also makes our outreach efforts more difficult. And with the election coming up, there's just a lot of things occupying people's attention right now. At the same time, we need to get the word out. Many residents may just be learning about net zero and what they can do, so we need to talk to them and start that conversation. These are kind of a few of the ideas that we've been kicking around in terms of outreach. One of them is to do a survey, and this is something that would help us to focus our priorities and also as a means of better targeting incentives and educational programs. So what if the town were able to reach out to a resident who might be considering replacing their furnace with information on heat pumps and incentive programs before they make a decision? How can we kind of use data to help inform that decision? We know we need to do some educational seminars. We also know that the solar challenge, which we held in 2013, was very successful, and we were able to get 55 new solar contracts and 406 kilowatts of solar power in town from that. So we'd love to hear your ideas about outreach. I'm going to share a couple more things that we're thinking about in terms of this, but just be thinking about that, and we'd love to discuss that. So one program we're thinking about is a Green Streets program. So this would be something which would engage residents at the level of the neighborhood or street. So if your street has a certain number of houses that complete a home energy audit or adopt other green measures, you would achieve a Green Street designation. So you could maybe have a lion sign or things like that that would show your pride in this. And we thought this could be a good way to raise awareness and encourage a sense of community pride around net zero. Working with the business community will also be critical. We thought it might work best to start the conversation with them by focusing right now on businesses that are already taking steps to be sustainable and promoting their efforts. We know that some businesses, it's just they're kind of focused on the current moment getting through. But for businesses who are already doing this stuff, it might be very helpful to them to highlight that. A business could be nominated in this process for sustainability practices or reducing their emissions. And then if selected, they have a plaque or a poster that they can hang in their window. And we could kind of promote them on the town newsletter and things like that. So we think this will be a good way of creating a positive feedback and engagement loop with businesses as well, and just kind of start that conversation. So let's see. I've said a lot. We have a lot of ideas and there are a lot of things that we need to do. Some of these things are already in progress. So we're looking for feedback is really critical on this, and some support in terms of the initiatives that we know we're doing. So getting better town-specific data and reporting, certain things that we could be asking during the building permit phase and things like that that will help us to track our progress. Helping us with community engagement, reaching out to residents. We're about to launch a survey, so that would be something that we would definitely be looking for help with. And we're trying to kind of get feedback. Our next steps are to reach out to other committees in town and engage other community groups. And finally, I guess there are a couple things that are already in the works. So in terms of priorities, we have some really near-term things that we're focusing on. So town meeting, the Mendez School and the public safety building are both up for a vote. Those are really good buildings to talk about in the sense that they're really necessary projects, they're important, and they've done some important steps to make them align with the net zero goals. Having a geothermal heating system, which is electric and allows us to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. Those buildings will become even more efficient over time as that grid improves. We also have a tree bylaw that's in progress, and we've been working with town staff. The planning department and the DPW have been talking with us about how to structure that, and it's been a good process, and we're trying to get that ready for fall town meeting. And that would be, the goal there would be to protect trees as a resource for sequestering carbon. And there's also some other things that are coming up, like the energy aggregation contract switching over so that residents can opt into a class 1 renewables, which is a higher level of renewable. So we want to promote that. And finally, we've been talking about the Brookline bylaw. So that electrification bylaw, recently the Attorney General found that certain parts of that are not enforceable because they conflict with state law. So there are groups that are looking at what are the other avenues. And so one of the things we may want to do as a town is look at zoning options to encourage electrification of new construction. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. And I'd love to hear your thoughts after seeing this presentation and kind of the direction we're heading and what you're seeing in this report.
Great. Thank you for that, Matt. You took us through a lot. I'm going to reach out to the board. Actually, if you could stop sharing your screen, Matt, sure. Then we can get this chat going. I think this is a great step toward our net zero plan for the town of Ashland. And you are right, our new buildings are looking at ways to use different energies, and we want to thank the Sustainability Committee and our new Sustainability Coordinator for the work. I know that especially for the Mendez, that's the project I'm on, a lot of input and a lot of information was processed to look at different ways of heating and cooling that building. So that's good. Board members, Steve, go ahead.
So thank you, Matt, and sustainability members. Great presentation. You've done a ton of work. One observation and one question. Observation is, you mentioned getting engaged with other committees. I would recommend that you be all over the planning board, and because they have the ability to condition projects, and particularly if we're going to be pushing, specific forms of heating and cooling and so on. So, I don't know if I can't say that we've done as a community a very good job of that over the recent past, but I would encourage, certainly for you to do this presentation in front of the planning board as well. And then my question is, a few months ago, and I think you and I talked about this, Matt, I was on a Zoom webinar, and one of the things regarding net zero, and I believe it was an MAPC program, but they talked about, and I didn't see it in your presentation, but they talked about net zero equity. net zero equity being, that everybody has access to these capabilities, these changes, and so on. Not everybody can afford an electric vehicle, obviously. Not everybody is in the position to revamp their home. How does that play into your analysis here? Because I think, we're talking about equity on a whole lot of levels, and I think it applies to, what we're trying to do with net zero.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. I think talking to the planning board makes a lot of sense. That's one of the next things. We've kind of started informally, but I think we'll definitely be pursuing that in a more formal way. The equity question is really central, and it's kind of an oversight that we don't even have a slide that calls that out. But I think where we've been talking about it is definitely in terms of a lot of the programs that the state offers and the incentives are need-based. There are some good need-based programs which make it, the incentives are greater depending on your level of income. So we definitely want to help people in that way. But I think it's also more about how we do our outreach and engagement and making sure that we actually structure that so that we have a conversation with those populations. Typically, vulnerable populations to climate change are those who have less means. So you can't necessarily move away from a coal-fired power plant or rising sea levels. So who are those groups in town that are being impacted in different ways by either climate change or the transition away from certain fossil fuels, which can be disruptive and can harm people's situation in various ways as well.
So just an additional comment, we're going to discuss later on in our meeting our housing production plan, and the document that we're reviewing speaks to some information, including the fact, and it was surprising to me, that 25% of our population is considered low income. And I thought that was just an extraordinary percentage. Didn't realize that. So again, it goes to how do we ensure that all of our population has access to these programs and to these opportunities for becoming a net zero community. So thank you.
Thanks.
Randy or Joe, any questions for Matt?
So thank you, Matt. That was a great presentation, and thank you to the Sustainability Committee for all the work that you guys have been doing on this. I know the greenhouse gas inventory was a lot of work and something that you were pushing really hard to get done, and it's a good baseline for all the information that you shared, which is good. I was struck by just how much energy is used to heat and cool our homes, plus the transportation as well. But really, the heating and cooling is huge. So my question is, you were talking about incentives a little bit, but I know when we moved into this house 5 years ago, literally the first thing we did was we got solar panels on our house. And at the time, there were really great tax incentives and credits to incentivize people to do solar panels. And so if I know that the state has a net zero initiative as well, I was curious if there's incentives similar to that could be utilized sort of a more widespread, because I think if people knew more about heat pumps and if they were incentivized to go that route, I think we would see a higher percentage of people moving towards that. So I think we kind of have to align that. So I was curious if what those incentives might look like.
Yeah, I think there are a couple different programs that target heat pumps. I think some of it falls under Mass Save, but there's also the Mass Clean Energy Center, and they have some incentives as well. So if you're looking to switch, if you have oil heat and you switch, you get a bigger incentive than necessarily natural gas. It's a little bit lower for that. But for natural gas, you probably break even. You may pay a little bit more over the lifespan of the system at the current prices. If you have an oil heat, you're going to save money. The incentives are pretty significant, so that's definitely something that residents should be looking into. And we'd like to host some workshops where we kind of talk about those technologies and what are the incentives that are out there, just so people are aware.
So question to kind of follow up. So I know when we replaced our furnace several years ago, we were able to qualify for what's called a heat loan, which is a 0% financing loan to be able to do our furnace and air conditioning. And so would a heat pump qualify under something like a heat loan? You know, is that kind of part of that?
Yeah, you could definitely get that. It's like a 0% interest loan. And there's other things which are available. I was on a workshop recently where they mentioned that Mass Save has something like 100% match for installation right now. I think it used to be like 50%. They would pay 50% of the price. So the price, I want to say it's 100%, which seems high, but they may be, if you have a Mass Save audit before November and get installation work done, the match is really good for that right now.
Okay. That's good information. And I know sustainability is, you know, when we did our citizen survey this past year, sustainability was, I think it was ranked second in highest priorities of our citizens. So I think people are open to what they can do to be more sustainable. So I think the education component is key, and I think you guys are on the right track to accomplish that. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Joe, did you have any questions or comments, or?
Just a quick comment, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Nope, go ahead.
Matt, thanks for the presentation. It was very thorough, and kiddingly, I said brief, but you were very informative, and the program itself. After I've read it prior to, I wanted to thank you publicly and the sustainability group for getting involved with the public safety building committee group, who through this HVAC process, you were able to provide us with additional information to help make our decision a lot easier down the road. So I just wanted to thank you and respect to the sustainability group. And I think we chose the right HVAC system for our new public safety building, which will be the first, by the way, in the entire Commonwealth to have a geothermal heating system. Just want to let everybody be aware of that if and when it passes through town meeting vote and the ballot. So just want to let you folks know that. So thank you again.
Yeah, we definitely want to help educate people around that and that choice and why we're doing that. Anything we can do to help out with that, we'd be glad to. We talked about some ideas. If the committee can definitely take a vote to recommend that for town meeting if that's helpful. But just let us know what we can do to help there.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to see in regards to what we present at the fall town meeting. I'm feeling we're going to try to limit to things that are absolutely necessary, but we'll see. So we'll keep you posted and keep working. And, when you have a little bit more, we can bring it forward.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you to everyone on the Sustainability Committee for your work. And for those working on this net zero plan. I think it's moving us in the right direction.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, we are going to go on to the rest of our agenda. Thank you again. Moving forward, discuss dates for special town meeting and special election. I know everyone's been concerned and wondering about this, and I know Michael has been working on it. So, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, myself, but especially Jen has really been working with the town clerk, Tara, to talk about potential town meeting and election dates. This year is very different, obviously because of COVID and the challenges that presents. But one of the things that the Public Safety Building Committee really wants to do as part of this process is to actually bring bids, bid numbers in hand to town meeting. And the way that timeline is working out is we would need to push town meeting and also the election, which is required for the debt exclusion portion of it, past November and into the month of December. So just looking at the calendar, we were, seeing what was the best balance between, making sure that people had an opportunity to attend and then also giving us the ability to bring those bids in. And we looked at the second week of December. Right now, Tara Ward believes that December 8th is the best date for the election. Now, historically, since I've been here, we've always done the ballot vote after town meeting. If we do the ballot vote on the 8th, we would need to do town meeting, at some point before, and then you start getting into the first week. But also for town meeting, wanted to get a sense of the board. What would you like to do? Would you like to look at a Wednesday, or not a Wednesday, but a Saturday? Because I know that has been brought up before. What are some of the things that you're thinking of and considering or want to consider?
Well, I think as we're looking at town meeting, we're certainly hearing concern from residents that they're like us to try to do something outside, and what that might look like, which will mean probably looking at a daytime town meeting. And I know we're looking, considering a Saturday morning, potentially either with a tent or with under the, solar arrays at the high school. I know we're not quite sure where we're going to be in December, but I think we need to look at potential options for what we can do to make more people comfortable coming to this town meeting, because it's going to be such an important one.
Yeah.
Steve?
So I would say, we may not know now what the situation with COVID-19 is going to be in December, but I think we have a pretty good idea of what the weather is going to be like in December. So I think, for me, that would be a concerning factor for outdoors. I'm actually, certainly supportive of trying some new days, opportunities to do town meetings that give more opportunities to residents to participate. So certainly open to a Saturday discussion. I just question the practicality of pursuing an outdoor potential for December. Maybe the springtime, that's another story. But I would say, I'm not going to speculate on COVID-19. I'm going to suggest, though, that there could be snow on the ground and it could be 0-degree weather.
Right.
In December.
Right. Brandy and Joe?
So, I've also been hearing concerns from residents about COVID and being able to hold something outdoors. So I think that we need to make sure we have that option, because I think the idea is that we want to make sure we have as much representation from people that want to attend town meeting as possible. So if, I agree with Steve that December, is iffy and there could be snow on the ground and it could be challenging. But I do think that might be a more comfortable, even as crazy as that sounds, a more comfortable option for people rather than indoors in the auditorium in the high school, or even in the gym, at the high school. So that's just my take on it. I think a Saturday morning is a good option.
Okay, Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with the fact that a Saturday morning would probably be the most likely time to hold a town meeting in December. Outside, that's going to be, who's to say? It's going to be a dice throw as to what the weather's going to be. But that could be said for November as well, if we were to have it outside. It'd be cold. It could be rainy. We've had snow for Thanksgiving too, so We don't know what the weather is like. Nor do we know what the weather is going to be like in the springtime if we want to hold it outside with rain. So again, weather is a big factor as to, what determines the location to have this special or a meeting outside. I know a lot of people don't like being inside because of the COVID-19 threat and fear. I'm one of them. Though I did attend that last meeting, I was very overly cautious about, being distanced from individuals, and it just didn't feel right. So others who may have medical issues as well, they're going to stay away. And we don't want that to happen. We want everybody to be able to have the ability to participate at town meeting. We've always said this, and we don't have a representative form of town meeting. We have an open town meeting. That means all the citizens all registered voters have a right to be there to express their concerns and vote accordingly. Has that happened over the years? I mean, I've been going to town meeting for since I've been 18. I'm now 65, and I can tell you that I think that the largest number of residents at one point in time was close to 480. So is that a fair representation? No, it's not a fair representation, and it never will be. But those, everyone has the opportunity to show up. If they do so, great. If they don't, that's their right to do so. Do we hold it outside? If we hold it outside, it's going to be detrimental to a lot of people. I think we're damned if we're doing, damned if we don't type of situation, Madam Chair. The only thing I can think of is that the number of articles that will be on this special, town meeting should be limited. So that way we're not putting a lot of residents in harm's way because they'll be out in the elements. So that's something we need to consider as well.
I wonder if we could do some kind of hybrid model, right? The gym was certainly set up in a way that for people who were comfortable coming inside, it was very well social distance. We limited the number of articles. Is there a way to do for people who are comfortable coming inside? And if we do it in the gym like that, that only allows 100 people. We have two very major projects coming to town meeting. The last high school project vote, I want to say we had 600 people in the Mendez, and so much so that we had to do it in the Mendez gym. Other major projects, Warren Woods and the purchase of Warren Woods, we had over 500 people in the high school auditorium. It was standing room only. People had to, sit in the aisles, and there was issues with that. So we don't have an indoor location that would, one, fit everybody who potentially would want to come vote on this. So could we do a hybrid so that people who either one, don't want to be outside, but we have a tent set up near the high school, and I don't know how, I'm sure it's feasible. I'm sure it's doable. It's a matter of what would it take to do that? And it might, it might change. Maybe we'll be able to be 3 feet apart instead of 6 feet apart, or maybe, I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff that has to be looked at. I definitely think we have to look at a daytime, and not only for this town meeting, but I think for other town meetings. I think, I've always been a little leery of doing a Saturday morning, knowing that there are people who, that's their Sabbath. It would be like asking other people to go on Sunday. So I think we'd have to get some input. But many communities do it on Saturday and are successful. So I think we still have a little more work to do in regards to what our town meeting will look like. I think we need to look at dates, and then look at potential hybrid so that people can come, because it's going to be critical town meeting this fall. And
Has the moderator weighed in at all?
I don't know that he has.
No, at this point in time, since technically the board calls the town meeting, ultimately you have the authority of saying where it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to have the moderator's input in that.
Yeah.
You don't need to take any votes tonight.
Good.
This is the sense of getting
Just to start the discussion.
you know, if you wanted to say, if it does come time to where you have to take a vote to call the town meeting, you could say the high school, and then we have a number of options there. I mean, maybe you know, a hybrid model could consist of having it out by the carport, the outside portion, and then the interior would be the gym. So if people felt comfortable inside, they could stay there. Outside, they could stay there. And at some point, it would really limit the distance either one would need to travel to make a point or make a comment about a particular thing. But that's just the first thing that came to mind.
Right. I mean, I think there could be, you know, you would decide where your main part is. Either, you know, it's inside and then you're watching from outside, or it's outside and you're watching from inside. And then you'd have, you know, the communication ability with either video or something like that. And you'd have counters and stuff like that. You know, the other thing we've heard people talk about is, well, why can't we do it remotely? And unfortunately, because we are open town meeting, there is no way for us to do remote participation. We're not allowed to legally, that nothing has been done to allow that. And also technically, and how would you do that, you know, to make sure that whoever's coming is a registered voter and that the person is actually who they say they are. And there's just a lot to all of this. So
You'd have to make a charter change with respect to that, or
Not a charter change. The legislators have to really make a change here. And this
well,
is
no,
this is probably a good opportunity for communities, for cities and towns to advocate for that. But, you know, just to go back to having a town meeting outdoors, you know, and if we do decide we're going to do it outdoors, maybe we do it at the high school stadium. You know, people do go to football games all winter long.
That's true too.
There's plenty of room there for participants. It might be, you know, one location, everybody, easy to manage the sound and the participation part of it. So, you know, it's, as you say, Yolanda, there's a lot to consider right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, didn't they just hold graduation up there?
They did.
Do we know how many people actually were able to sit in the field?
Well, they had it set up. The chairs were set up between the 20-yard lines. They had 159 graduates. And so they were in single seats in 5 rows. I forget how many across. And then they had double seats for the parents in back of them. So most of the kids, if they had 2 parents, so 400 people, 500 people were there. So that's certainly an idea, right? We could do it on the football field, you know, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. We get the chairs set up, you know, instead of doing it in the gym. The risk there is weather, right? So, but we could have a snow date or a cold date or a rain date or, yeah.
So maybe we could move it up a couple weeks, like earlier in November, just because, you know, there could be a very different. I mean, I know you said you wanted to have bids in hand for the public safety building, but, you know, variability of weather from, you know, early November to, you know, say beginning of December, you know, it could be a very different story. So if we have a little bit of flexibility.
Everything we've been planning, Brandy, with relative to going to town meeting and the ballot vote for the public safety building, and I think for the schools as well, is predicated on, you know, having those bids in hand, at least for the public safety building, so that, you know, the town, the taxpayers, the residents know exactly what what they're voting for. And so that's always been our process, and our timeline has always been predicated on that.
And that is similar for the Mendez.
That's why it's important for us, for the Public Safety Building Committee.
Yeah, so if we're looking at a potential date of December 8th for the election, we could do it the Saturday just before, which would be December 5th. And then the weekend before that is Thanksgiving. So if you're trying to do it before then, it would be November 21st. So that's a whole 2 weeks before the town election. So
Well, you don't have to worry about youth activities. Youth sports have been.
Right.
So if you had it on a Saturday, you're not interfering with families having their children involved either in hockey or football or even basketball.
Hockey, I think certain sports are certainly happening now. So we'll have to see. But I think if we plan it enough ahead, then, as with anything. So,
what I can do is I can go back and, first of all, I'd like to talk to, the building committee and also Vertex and just talk a little bit about dates. Actually, believe it or not, Vertex had suggested pushing it out to January, and we were like, no way. And just kind of get a little bit more refinement on what's actually feasible and what's not feasible. It may turn out that we need to do an election before town meeting as well. So obviously there's some more information I need to gather.
Okay.
On this, and we can keep the discussion going.
But I would also say if we could reach out to our facilities people and say, okay, what would it look like doing it on the field in December in regards to audiovisual and seating and things like that. I think that's certain, your point about football games in December, Steve, is certainly valid. So
Super Bowl was not tropical weather.
I remember I think a Thanksgiving game where they had to shovel the football field in Ashland.
True. It wasn't that long ago.
I think a year or two. I don't think we want to have to deal with that, but
No.
Okay. Well, let's do a little more research and I think maybe, we can start reaching out to people. I'm not going to take citizen participation now, Mark. Thank you for raising your hand. If you have thoughts that you want to reach out to us, you can certainly do it to any of the board members. And we'll be reaching out to people as well to get feedback at that point. We're not going to do it right now. So, okay, good. Do you have enough information to,
Yeah.
Michael? Great. Okay. We're going to remove item C from our old and new business because that has not been prepared yet. Our next item is going to be to discuss and vote on the Housing Production Plan Committee appointment for the Select Board representative. So back in 2015, we did our first housing production plan. I was fortunate enough to be part of that and helped us actually get that started. I had hoped to be able to be the Select Board representative this year for this one as well. Unfortunately, my life will not allow that, being chair and then stepping up to do this. So for those who are not familiar, a housing production plan is a plan that allows us to navigate and plan for affordable housing within Ashland. And then when you have your housing production plan in place and you have guidelines as to when you're going to have certain housing available, it helps protect you from 40Bs coming in and saying, we can just do this. So it's very important to get this updated and to see what we have and move it forward. I know there's a few people other than myself who had been interested. So Brandy, you want to talk about it?
Absolutely. So I read through the project summary that was sent to us, and the idea of increasing our housing diversity and opportunities for affordable housing, and also just diving into our zoning and what our current plans are, and how our priority projects kind of relate into the housing of Ashland currently, and then how we're going to be positioned for the future was something that really interested me. I thought that learning more about zoning and our housing would be a really good informational process for me, and so I wanted to throw it out to the group that I would love to be considered to represent the Select Board on the Housing Production Plan Committee. So thank you.
Okay, Joe or Steve?
Yeah, no, very good, Brandy. Appreciate you stepping up and being willing to participate. I did read through the outline, and it was looks like a great process. And I think you certainly learn a lot about housing needs in Ashland, and particularly with some of the data points that were in that presentation. So certainly encourage you to get involved with that, and we'll certainly advocate for, as this board has done, I think in many ways, has advocated and been able to achieve an amount of affordable housing for this community.
But not enough.
No, actually, we're getting closer. I mean, I think the report right now gives us almost 7% of our stock, I think, as I recall, but still more work to be done, certainly. And but given our demographics, there's certainly a need there. So I'm supportive, Brandy. So you have my vote.
Okay.
So I appreciate Brandy stepping up to volunteer to fill that position, and hopefully we can work together, being part of the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm sure we'll see you during some of our meetings to discuss these issues as well. And so I appreciate that. So I'm sure that Madam Chair is looking for a motion. So unless somebody else is willing, I know Rob probably won't be able to do it, but will we have an individual, a member who really wants to do this? I can see the look on her face, and I appreciate that. Just remember one thing: the military always used to tell people, never volunteer. Right?
This would be my first committee.
However, on this matter, I think you would be a great fit, and a person that would dive right into it and make a positive impact with this program. So
thank you, and Steve, for your support. I appreciate that very much.
So you're going to give me a motion, Joe?
So I make a motion that we appoint Ms. Brandy Kinsman to be part of the Select Board representative to the Housing Production Plan Committee.
Can I have a second?
Yes, but before I second, Joe, to go to your comment about Rob not being here. I mean, I'm not sure if we have any other appointments tonight, but when you're not here, it's always
usually you get appointed.
But I second Brandy's nomination.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to appoint Brandy as the Select Board representative to the Housing Production Plan. We'll take a roll call vote. Kinsman?
Aye.
Mignani?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Aye.
And Greaves? Aye. Brandy, I know when I participated in this the last time, I learned so much. I didn't get to work with Peter because he wasn't our town planner at the time, but MAPC is such a great group. Their proposal, I'm always amazed at how detailed their proposals are in these things. I love the fact that as part of it, they're also going to be looking at our inclusionary zoning bylaws and creating something for inclusionary zoning. I think it is so necessary. So I look forward to frequent updates, and I may stop in on some of the meetings only because it's something I'm really interested in, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with our update.
Thank you. And there's a lot of community engagement.
Yes.
Along in the project summary. So I'm looking forward to reaching out to lots of members of the community and getting them engaged in this process as well. So.
Yep. And Michael, will you now make sure that we're reaching out to some of the other boards and committees that they need to have membership from to?
Yeah, so Peter and I have been working on that. Just kind of what the composition is. Certainly, there are some recommendations. When you're doing this, you're trying to find a balance of opinions and various perspectives, while at the same time keeping it manageable so you don't get bogged down. Joe, you talked about the Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust is almost assured that they would have a seat at the table.
Yep.
With regards to this, whether that be you or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it probably shouldn't be Joe, because then we'll have two Select Board members sitting there.
That's right.
So,
if she's still here, we'll probably ask Deb to be the Affordable Housing Trust representative.
I think she's dropped off, so.
Oh, okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And good luck with that, Brandy. I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you. You guys will hear lots and lots about this. I promise.
Good. Recertify the representative to the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. My understanding is that is Ed Berman. And my understanding is that he would like to continue. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. If I can get a motion to recertify Ed Berman as our representative to the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. I have a motion from Joe and I'll take the second from Steve. He was louder. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. And thank you to Ed Berman for doing that. It's so important that we have someone sitting there and being willing to go to their meetings and he's, I know, gotten us some extra stuff. So that was great. Okay. Our next item, vote to purchase the property known as the MBTA Access Road in the town of Ashland pursuant to a vote of Article 16 of the Ashland Town Meeting on May 8th with a purchase price of $1. And we were given specific language by Lisa.
Mhm. That's correct.
Yep. Oh, I need to open my other document. So, any questions or discussion on this? Just to let people know who are sitting and watching, we took a vote as a town to purchase the MBTA access road to make it a town street. And this is now, we have to take an official vote to do the purchase. So it has to be done in open session and then we will own it. Joe?
I do have one question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Before we go through this, and this is something that I've always asked when we do accept specific roads. Has Doug Small and his crew gone to look over the road to make sure that it is up to the standards of the town? So that way we don't own a deficiency that we have to repair immediately. I'm always curious about that. I just want to make sure that it's up to specs. So that way we don't have to pay for something that should have been paid for by the previous property owner.
Yes, well, I mean, we've always essentially been kind of the property owner. It's before it was the MBTA driveway, and that's what it was considered. If you remember, back in 2016, we actually rebuilt the road to our standards and actually complete street standards. So Doug is okay with this.
Okay, but since then we've had some serious construction up in that area with vehicles. Use Cirrus as an example, and just want to make sure that there hasn't been any damage or anything done that we'd have to be worried about within the immediate future.
No, there hasn't been any damage. You know, the early stages of Cirrus being built, we had some drainage issues. Didn't necessarily affect the integrity of the road, but those had to be worked out. But those have been worked out for a while. And I think it's very, very important to point out, Yolanda, you neglected to mention the year. I'm assuming that was on purpose. 28. This vote was 2018. If anybody ever had preconceived notions that government works quick, that
Right, and that was at our annual town meeting in 2018 that you know the town voted to support this and do this, and yeah. But it looks like it took the MBTA a little while to get us these documents, so it's not our slowness, it's our Mass Transit Authority.
Well, you know, that's the thing when you got two parties. You know, it might not be at the top of one's radar screen at the time it is the top of another's. So
right,
we've been trying, so we're finally successful.
Like I can remember having here before this vote was taken.
Yeah,
well, it hasn't been that long, Joe.
2 years, hey. Things happen in 2 years.
That is true.
Yeah, I think we all had more hair a couple of years ago, so I appreciate that one. I think Rob Muhlenbeek too.
Okay, if I can get a motion to vote to purchase the property known as the MBT Access Road in the town of Ashland, pursuant to a vote of Article 16 of the Ashland Town Meeting on May 8th, 2018, with a purchase price of $1.
So moved.
There you go.
I heard it from Brandy is so moved. If I can get a second.
Great, Steve.
Second.
There you
Second,
go.
a second
No,
from
wait,
Steve.
before we vote, no negotiation on the price, Michael?
This is the best I could do. I'm sorry.
All right, okay. Second.
If there is no further discussion, we will do a roll call vote. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. And then I know people are working on, we are actually going to be renaming this street now that we own it. And I know we are working on a date for that. So hopefully we'll be able to announce that at our next select board meeting when that event will be happening to rename this. Moving on. So discuss tri-board meeting dates, August 18th and August 31st. These are in relationship to the Mendez School Building project. We want to have a tri-board meeting to review the projects and review some of the financing for this. So these are the dates that have been proposed. The August 31st one, I know we have a select board meeting that week as well, but I was hoping that that would be okay with everybody. And same with, we don't have a meeting the week of the August 18th, but I was hoping that that would work for people as well.
Why 2 meetings?
So the first one is to present the information and discuss it. And then the second one is to do the final vote.
Okay.
It's a
Time frame?
process.
6 o'clock start.
I believe it is, but we'll double check that and let you know.
Okay.
And I think we double checked calendars and there was nothing else going on. So, okay.
Good.
Thoughts or comments? No? Good.
Wait a
That's
minute.
good.
You said August 31st and the 18th? Okay.
Yes,
Okay. One's a Monday and the other one's a Tuesday.
correct. They had wanted to do it August 18th and September 1st, but September 1st is an election day, so we can't have a meeting that night.
Okay.
Okay, we've already done consent agenda. We are moving on to our priority project updates. Rail Transit District. Michael.
Yes. So I have included in your packet a request from Bob Gaynor, who is currently the owner of RTD Lot 2. We've been talking a lot about UGC. They're the proposed developer. Hearing the permits, but right now Bob Gaynor still owns the property. The development agreement that was signed by the board and ultimately signed by UGC needs to also be signed by Mr. Gaynor. As of today, I have not received notification that he has done that. And I think that is in part due to what he's requesting in this letter, which is essentially to put the development agreement in escrow. I'm not necessarily sure how this works mechanically, neither did Lisa. Put it in escrow in case something happened with UGC. And, you know, I can understand Bob's position. I think some of his concerns, I think he's being overly conservative on this. There's the underlying zoning is the underlying zoning. And, you know, we put together a development agreement and ultimately the board agreed to a development agreement with UGC based on so many different things, the site plan, the product that they were offering. And, you know, unless, I mean, the backing of UGC and some of their experience in doing these types of projects. So I really find it hard to, you know, be able to say this DA is going to be transferable.
I don't know how we would justify giving up our ability to negotiate with, if this deal with between Gaynor and UGC falls apart, why we would be want to give up our ability to negotiate with somebody new. Circumstances may be very different, and I will say that, given the conversation we had earlier about net zero and about the looking at stressing different building components, that might be part of a new development agreement. So I don't see how or why we would ever give up that capacity.
Steve, I have to agree with you 100%. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I thoroughly agree. And I had this conversation with Michael earlier about, this is between Gaynor and UGC, and if they can't come to terms with one another, we're not going to be the intermediary here. That's not what we do. I mean, we've already signed a development agreement with UGC. They've accepted it. And as far as I'm concerned, I just think this is a way to, again, in my opinion, this is a way for Gaynor not to pay what he owes us, once this transaction is complete. Just a thought, guys. That's, yeah. I just think it's the way it is. And we shouldn't get involved in it.
Brandy? You're muted.
Sorry, I agree. I think that, if for some reason this would fall through, we should have the right to renegotiate a new development agreement. I think that whoever would be the developer that would come on site would expect that, I would think, because if they were inheriting a development agreement that wasn't, I just don't see it being something that would be appealing to any developer to make. I just don't see it as something that logistically would work really well. So I agree.
Okay. Yeah, I don't understand, one, how Bob thinks he was kept out of the loop. I would think that if he still owns this property, he would be paying attention and possibly checking in with UGC, because it has taken a while to get the development agreement signed. So it would be his almost responsibility to make sure things with UGC are moving forward. Right. And as other
he was actually on many of our meetings.
I know.
Talking about it. He was fully aware of the negotiations, and certainly had every opportunity to communicate with Michael or with Lisa, prior to sending that letter. So, right. I think he's, our mutual interests do not align here, and so I think it's clear that he needs to make his bones with UGC and move on.
Right, I would agree with that. So,
just to let you know.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, so UGC also, they reached out to me this week and they wanted to start the technical review process. Technically, pardon the pun, I think it's very premature to start investing staff resources and time into something there. We don't have a consummated development agreement. So,
well, and they don't own the property yet, right? Isn't that part of what the development agreement allows them? That they then get the property?
No, so that would be defined within the purchase and sale between UGC and Gaynor, and that would define when that property would actually transfer. And the trigger is probably going to be the issuance of the comprehensive permit.
Right. So, yeah, I would say until we have the development agreement in hand, we don't start doing any technical reviews.
Okay. Cool.
Unless someone else feels differently from the board, but why would we put staff resources on we've already spent a lot of time on staff resources on this project that, unless we have that development agreement in hand.
I just want to ask the group as a whole, do you find this surprising? This type of action surprising? Seriously, with all due respect, you've been dealing with this gentleman for how long? I mean, let's put it this way.
Long
I mean,
time.
I've been on the board for close to 14 years, and I can tell you that his actions haven't changed one iota.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, this is standard procedure for him, and I don't think we should get involved in any way, shape, or form. I'm done.
No comment.
Okay.
Now, I think I certainly agree with not at this point, you know, once everything is dotted and crossed, then, you know, then we can start the technical review, and then they're going to have to go before the ZBA as well and start that process. So, you know, they still have a ways to go here, but at this point, it seems like Gaynor is hanging them up, not the town of Ashland.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Michael, do you want a motion to say that we deny, no, or are we good with just the discussion to say that we're not going to do this?
We're good with the discussion.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Anything else, Rail Transit District?
Do we have to ask or provide Michael the authority to express our concerns to Mr. Gaynor as a result of this letter? Should he get a phone call or some correspondence wanting to know what action the select board has taken with respect to his request?
Oh, I will certainly relay, you know, the board.
Okay.
I mean,
Just wasn't sure if we had to do something officially by saying we, you know, we allow Michael to speak on our behalf, that we're not gonna, you know, get involved in this action in any way, shape, or form.
I don't think it's necessary.
I think we're okay, you
Okay.
know, and if he pushes it, then we can take a vote at our next meeting.
Okay,
But I think it's been very clear that we do not support his request.
okay, sounds good.
Okay. Anything else Rail Transit District related?
No.
Well, actually, our trail group got a grant, right? And isn't that for the Trolley Brook Trail
Hmm.
portion?
It is for, yes, that's a good point. The RTD section known as Trolley Brook Trail. So we did get, we were awarded a $50,000 grant.
Nice. Good.
Um,
Congratulations to them for that.
And to Jen, I think Jen did some quite a bit of work on this, so I think she deserves some thanks.
Definitely then. Yay, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Is there a sunset date on that grant?
There is a
Okay, so
sunset.
they just can't, they have to act on it sooner than later.
The funds expire at the end of this fiscal year, so it'd be June 30th of 2021.
Okay.
Okay.
So what will they be using those funds for?
Well, so there's obviously the design, but then you also have to construct the project. You know, ironically, we were debating whether to even turn this grant application in because things weren't not necessarily lining up between, you know, the normal sequences, design and construction. So we do have a number of funding sources for this,
Right.
capital, and then so there's some money that Representative Lewis was able to put in that we have received.
Good.
There's also some planning board funds.
Nice. Good. Okay. Okay. Downtown project Riverwalk and Mill Pond. We're close, right? On Mill Pond and the Riverwalk?
Oh, sorry. Apologize for that.
Not a problem.
Let's hope he stays down there. So I'll start with downtown. We did get some not so good news when Eversource denied our contractor Gioso the ability to do some of the work as opposed to an Eversource approved contractor. I'm still going to work on that and see if we can't change their mind. But you know, not a big deal, but certainly not a positive development.
Right.
But so now Gioso has been willing to look at doing work, the jacking under the track work, which seems to be okay with Eversource. And so that's good news. So hopefully we still hope to be able to start this project, you know, towards the end of the summer.
Great.
Get some months of construction.
Okay.
Does anybody want a cat?
Sorry, I already have two.
Okay. All right. There's one that might be available.
Yeah, I think Nora may have something to say about that.
But Nora can come down here and get the cat.
You might want Nora to come with the cat.
That is very true. Mill Pond, if everybody has been following the progress there, DPW finally got some more materials in to finish up the railing.
Nice.
Very nice. They got the benches in. They've got the trash receptacles in. They're finishing up the work, which is the connection of that trail in Mill Pond Park to the sidewalk that's Myrtle Street. And they probably will not get the bollards and the railings for the ramp going up to the bridge anytime soon. But we do feel like we're getting close to the point where we can open. And
Okay.
I would suggest we start looking. We can coordinate this offline. Probably 2 Saturdays from now, between 2 and 4 Saturdays from now. If you still want to do a Saturday, if you want to do a weekday, it's probably going to open up some more.
I think a Saturday would be nice to do some kind of ribbon cutting / recognition of all the work that's been done there. And,
I saw a recent.
like at 1:30 or 2, maybe 1:30, let people finish up at the farmer's market and then come and celebrate the Riverwalk and the bridge and stuff. So
Looks-
Very-
um,
and-
I did have-
hold on, Brandy and then Steve.
Okay, sorry. It looks great. I was over there over the weekend. One thing I noticed is that on the bridge side, there's 4 trash barrels, which is great because I think having multiple trash barrels is a good thing. I did notice that there aren't any trash barrels on the other side, on the Main Street side where the platform is, and I noticed there is trash that sometimes accumulates over there. So I was wondering if maybe, one of those 4 trash barrels might be able to be moved over to the other side, just because I think that might not be a bad idea.
Or we start training people to do trash in, trash out. You don't leave your trash, you take it out with you.
So, we could certainly look at that. I agree. Obviously we would like to prevent trash being thrown on the ground in the first place. I will tell you, Roy Correa has really thought this through. Normally, you pour concrete pads for things like the benches and you bolt them down. You can even do that for the trash receptacles, but he has kept them off those concrete pads just until we finalize everything. We need to hit it with the hydro seed again a little bit. And so we'll probably have a better idea of a more permanent location for those in the near future.
Okay.
I
Steve?
saw a recent.
Wait,
picture.
Joe, hold on.
I'm sorry, Stephen.
Steve?
Oh, I was just going to again comment that this is another project that Jen did an awful lot of work on and was instrumental in moving this forward. Particularly with the challenges of getting easements and working with the neighbors. So, we really owe a lot of thanks to Jen for her work on this project. And it's not over yet because we still have to do the platform and the boardwalk area as well. But so again, thank you to Jen.
You beat me to the punch on that one, Steve, but that's okay. Joe?
That's okay. That's quite all right. There was a wonderful display of photographs this weekend on Facebook showing the bridge and the expansion of the bridge over the walkway. I thought it was beautiful. My concern was the person that was taking the picture looked like they were in the middle of a heat stroke because they just got done running. And
Thanks.
well, wait a minute. I didn't mention anybody's name. I wasn't going to, but wow, you would just beat red. And I was worried for you. I was really worried for you.
I'm good.
Okay, as long as you're good. Okay, yeah, sure, you're hydrating now, but you weren't there, that's for sure. No, but thank you, Jen, for all the work that you've done. It looks beautiful, and I know there are a lot of people that have commented to me that, they would like to see the park open so they can enjoy it and, do their continued walking. So the sooner the better.
Yes. Yes,
Everyone's anticipating.
I would like to thank you as well, Jen. I know it's been a process, not only that part of it, but the other part of it as well. And it's been what, 2 years now that we all stood out and shovels in the ground to get that project going. So
Yeah, both that for sure.
yeah, good. Well, thank you again. And I haven't walked it recently, so I look forward to getting to do that, and hopefully others will as well. Moving on, public safety building. Any other updates based other than what we've already talked about?
Oh, I wanted to thank you for acknowledging the work that Jen did. I don't think everybody realizes how much time, her own personal time, she put into this. A lot of people say, yes, we're staff, we get paid to do this, and that is absolutely 100% true. But especially with Jen, sometimes when you look at that on an hourly wage basis, looking at the time that she puts in, people really don't understand, the value that she brings, because she's pretty quiet too. And she's very modest. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
Good. Okay.
Public safety building. Yeah, we had a great forum last night.
We did. I was very, very pleased. And I think the presentation went very smooth. There was a lot of information. I think it was presented in a way that people were able to understand it. And that's the first of several that we will be presenting to the community over the next month or two. So, but the other dates yet to be determined.
Yeah, I sat in through the last part of it, and I was actually surprised that there were no questions afterwards. And I mentioned it to Michael. I said one of two things: either one, your presentations was so thorough that you covered all the questions, or two, people just weren't quite sure what to ask.
Or a combination of both.
Or a combination of both. But the parts that I saw, I think were very informative and very helpful. So
I did plead with people to, if they didn't feel comfortable or what, please write the building committee, let us know what they thought was important. Let us know what they thought wasn't important, what they wanted some more insight on. I obviously get very, very concerned about explaining the financial aspects, because we are doing this, we'll just say creatively, in order to lessen the tax burden on residents. So hopefully that came across well.
Good.
I received a phone call and an email from 2 residents who actually watched the forum via WACA, and they were very appreciative of the information that was provided.
Good.
One of the gentlemen said that it was done in a way that he actually understood. He wasn't confused about, especially when we're talking about the finances and how it was going to be handled. He thought it was going to be a little bit more in depth, and the way it was presented, he was very, very happy, and he was able to understand it. So maybe that answers your question, Yolanda, as to why there weren't any questions. But I was very appreciative of all the presenters last night, and it just goes to show that everyone has been putting a lot of time and effort into it. Jen has been on the phone. She's been very diligent in the work that needs to get done. And we're trying to do everything to provide this community a public safety building, not just for today, but for the next 50 plus years. So hopefully people will understand that and appreciate what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I know we do have residents who have been in town for a long time who probably remember when the current police station went in. And I remember hearing, I was not here, but I remember hearing stories that the minute it went in, it was already obsolete. The minute it was put in. And I know that this building committee and everyone working on it is making sure that is not the case. Should this building get passed by the taxpayers, that it will be something that will be valuable and valid and usable to the town for a long time.
For many years to come. I was one of those people that moved in from the trailer that was next to the town hall.
Wow.
And that was frightening. Trying to book people in a small trailer and then dealing with those people who have issues with police themselves it made for a difficult time and a very interesting time. Needless to say, it was hair raising, and I'm glad. So we were all happy to be in that new building. But like you said, Yolanda, when we walked in, it was already too small for the needs of the department then.
Yeah.
So,
Steve?
I just wanted to comment I think the process for the design, at least of the interior of the building, I think has been well done, because the designers, Janet and Amy, worked extensively with Chief Roby, Chief Alfano, and all of their people, all of their staffs, to review and to determine what works, what doesn't work. And, the fact that they're going to be the ones living in this building,
Right.
is critical that they have, the sufficient input into the layout. So I think that's worked out pretty well. And, I think if we're successful in funding this, I think it'll be a building the community will be proud of for well beyond my shelf life, which is a good thing.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Joe, for your work on the committee. Thank you, Michael and Jen, as well as the rest of the members. Moving on, Warren District and Valentine Estate. Michael?
I'll start with the Valentine Estate. So everybody noticed the asteroid hole that was through the roof. That was covered with a tarp. Yesterday afternoon, it was not covered with the tarp.
Oh no.
After the storm. So we're working on that. One of the things I don't know if I've mentioned before, but if you follow the Valentine Estate Facebook page, you'll see we've had a number of Boy Scouts there working to remove some of the invasive species. So that has been very, very helpful, and they've done wonderful work there. I'd like to stress the fact that I think we all want to see something happen there. None more so than the committee that's been working on this. Obviously it's just a very challenging site for a number of different reasons. So we're gonna look at maybe some new ideas and some new thoughts and see if maybe we can kind of get something that's right for the community, but also could move maybe a little bit quicker. So that's the Valentine property.
Yeah, but before we go on, I just want to say, I think people, I remember when we decided to buy this, and people have to remember it was a private home for a long time. And then, the developer had it and we decided to purchase it. And even when we decided to purchase it, we were saying, we're not quite sure what to do with this. We know that lots of people have ideas. But, it took funding and it took money out of the town and our taxes to just buy the property. So I think, I thank you to the Boy Scouts for the work that they're doing there. And I know that the committee that we have in place, they've been trying to do things and figure out what to do. But as with everything with COVID, things are being impacted. So I think, if people have ideas, if people want to give input, reach out to the committee and help them and see what they can do to support this. It's one of those pieces of property that we bought it to save it, but we didn't have a real plan. And we're trying to create that plan. And, if you have ideas or if you have energy and you want to work on what's going on there, reach out to the committee and see what support you can give them. That would be my recommendation. So any other thoughts or comments on Valentine Estate? Because if not, we'll go on to the Warren District. Okay, Warren District, update on the barn and the Hall House, Michael?
I'll start with the barn. So the architects have gone through and they've redesigned yet again the building to, I think, create a much more accurate replica of the barn that was there before.
Nice.
So I have approved them to move forward with putting together construction documents and putting that out to bid. So we expect that to happen over the next couple of weeks. I think the bids would probably be out there for 6 weeks. Probably provide a little bit more insight on that if I was wrong.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll get good bids in, and we can move forward with reconstructing it.
Great. Okay.
There's that, and then the Hall House. I did meet with the winning bidder today. I just want to remind everybody that this project, the board voted to move forward with a plan that was put together in actually December 31st of 2018, which called for that house to be restored. In that way, we could achieve the goals of having a restored home that could be eligible on the National Register. And we wouldn't necessarily have to pay for that. We weren't really expecting a lot of money for this property. The financial benefit for the town was that we wouldn't have to pay to renovate it, which, as we all know, it costs us, meaning the town, any government agency, probably two times as much as it does for a private entity. So it made sense. That was a great way to achieve the goals that we wanted. We put it out to bid the first time for restoration. We had we only had one bidder. We had a number of entities pull the bid, but only one bid. After they got into it and looked at it a little bit more, they decided that it really the only thing that they could do would be a tear down and build a replica. I told them that we couldn't just make that change. That is a fundamental change. So we put it out to bid for a second time. And again, a number of people expressed some interest, but we only had one bidder. And, that's unfortunate, but a lot of people had the opportunity to submit a proposal and show what they could do. They chose not to do that. So we're at the point now where we do have a winning bidder. He is moving forward. We're working out things on an agreement with Framingham State, because that barn's right behind them and there's driveway access and things of that nature. So maybe I'll have some more information about that in the future, but okay. Right now that's where we are.
Okay. I'd like to bring up one thing regarding the Warren District. We've had a number of residents reach out. I've had a couple of, Michael, you've had a couple, I think other members as well, regarding Warren Woods and the fact that it is not open and still not open, even though other open space in town, our parks, our playgrounds are available to residents. I had what I thought was a great conversation with the chair of the Conservation Commission, Jean Crouch. And originally I had gotten word that they were going to try to open it this past weekend. There was then issues. They thought, people trying to use the parking lot to get to the state park and to get to the Warren Conference Center. So I've let him know that we were going to talk about it here. I think we need to look at next steps to possibly get that property back open for people. So, Steve?
So just a couple comments regarding the accessibility of Warren Woods. And, I certainly have had comments from residents as well. And, from my perspective, I guess a couple things. Number one, this is a taxpayer funded town asset. It's no different than any other town asset that we have that's open and available to the public, or should be, whether it's the town forest or Stone Park or the Riverwalk or any number of assets that we possess. At the same time, I'm certainly sensitive to the challenges of irresponsible use of properties, and whether it's dog walkers or whatever it might be, but those challenges and pressures exist everywhere. So I personally believe that the parking lot should be open and available for residents to use. Number one, again, because we are all paying for it, but for a couple of other reasons. And I'm going to reference the conservation restriction that exists on the property. Now, when we purchased Warren Woods, it was purchased through CPA funds, and we were required to put a conservation restriction on the property, which we did. Audubon holds the the restriction. Now, the restriction, when it was written, or actually as it is written, has two areas of responsibility. One is what's called the building envelope, which is the 1 acre area that was designated to be under the care and custody of at the time, the Board of Selectmen. And that included the parking lot. And the rationale for having that building envelope was because we thought at one time, and this goes back to 2014 and 15, we might potentially be moving the Valentine barn to Warren Woods. So the board we determined the board would have care and custody of this building envelope, and the Conservation Commission would have control over the rest of the property. So fast forward a couple of years, and we realized that we're not going to build there or move anything there. The Conservation Commission, the stewardship group, asked if the board would be amenable to putting the whole property under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. And in good faith, we did that, since we weren't going to be building anything. The one thing we haven't done, though, is we haven't changed the conservation restriction. It still exists, and it still reads, the Board of Selectmen have the care and custody of this 1 acre area. Now, that's number one. So that was adopted through town meeting. We haven't amended it. We haven't brought it back to town meeting. So I would want, and I think the board would want, some clarification, legal clarification, whether that is the operating in the existing document, because if that's the case, and my gut sense is it is, because it hasn't been changed. It's never voted on. And so I would want some clarity on that. And then number two, and Brandy, this is well before your time. Yolanda, I'm not sure, it might have been before your time, I don't know. But the town received the land grant from the state for when we purchased Warren Woods, $500,000. Yep. And there were conditions on that. And one of the conditions actually reads, the general public must have reasonable access to the land. And I would suggest we don't have reasonable access to the land by virtue of having it closed off the way it is. There's no sidewalks in that area of town. How do you get there? You know, how does any reasonable resident get there other than to walk along Chestnut or Elliott Street without any sidewalks? So, you know, I share the concerns about dog walkers. I share the concerns about a number of things, but you know, I think these things can be managed. I think we need to figure a way, in conjunction, in concert with the Conservation Commission, to make this work. And but I would want clarity. I would ask for clarification, Michael, about the CR as well as the land grant language.
Yeah, the conservation restriction is a unique one. The land grant seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so I would, you know, voice what Steve is saying and say, yeah, if we can have those things checked, and if you know, if we are still working under the CR and we do have control of that 1 acre, let's find that out, and then let's get the chain taken down. And if, you know, one of the concerns was that people are parking there to access the Warren Conference Center. I think if we can get a sign made, I don't know how difficult this would be or how quickly, that says parking for Warren Woods only. Let's get that up there now.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we, you know, let's assume we get clarification fairly quickly. I'm not saying that we immediately go there and remove the chains. What I'm suggesting, though, is that we do work with the Conservation Commission to come up with a plan that's going to, you know, I think satisfy all of our concerns.
Yep. Okay. Joe or Brandy, any thoughts on Warren Woods or Anything on that district?
Well, I did have conversation with you, Yolanda, a few days ago, and I watched it up over the weekend. I personally, my wife and I like to go get something to eat, take a bag lunch, and we used to drive up there in the parking lot and just look at the scenery. We wouldn't walk the property, but we would sit there and just enjoy the whole surroundings of that area. And we can't do that now. And I know there are other people that have done the same thing. They've commented to me about that, about, you know, why aren't we able to go in there anymore? And there, I would explain that it was being utilized by other people for other reasons other than for Warren Woods themselves. And again, the biggest thing was, well, put a sign up. And again, signs everywhere, sign, you know, type of deal. But the Warren Conference Center right now is not being utilized to its max. If anything, it's about 15% being utilized, and they furloughed and laid off a good portion of their employees right now. So the Warren Conference Center is not an issue for people to overpark over there and use their facilities, because they're not being utilized at all. So to open that up and to have that as an excuse, well, people are using Warren Center facilities, is not happening. Because what they will do is they will open up the parking lot area should there be an event. And when there isn't an event, you'll see those orange cones shutting off the driveways to those locations because there isn't anything going on. So I would be all in agreement of getting that chain down so that the townspeople could utilize it. And you know, I think people need to remember where those monies came from. It came from all of us, not just a selected few.
Okay, good.
I would agree. I think we need to, you know, work with the Conservation Commission and make sure that you know, we're in agreement. But I do think that we need to have this open to the public, just like we have the town forest open. You know, there's limited parking at the town forest, and there's not, you know, there's generally not issues with people parking, you know, in the street on Winter Street or anything like that. So I think as long as we can monitor it and you know, address any issues that come up, I think it's doable. I mean, I think that at this point, you know, people are looking for more activities, and more outside activities is good, and this is a town resource that people should be able to enjoy. So, you know, we need to be able to open this up to the public.
Okay.
I'll just make one more comment, Yolanda. And,
yep.
You know, if we just divert some of the resources that we apply to what's going on at the state parks during this particular period of time during the summer, and divert it to, you know, overseeing or supervising Warren Woods, I think we could solve, you know, some of these concerns. And I'm going to speak about the state parks later on at board reports. But, you know, the fact is we apply a lot of resources to the state parks through our police and fire. So, so I think this is eminently doable. I think it's just not. It doesn't make any sense at all that this is not open and available to the residents who are paying for it.
And I think just like any other street where people are parking and they're not supposed to park, we ask our police to police that and give tickets as necessary. And there are certainly enough signs now on Elliott and on Chestnut, the temporary no, you know, Chestnut has some permanent no parking signs, and there's temporary ones on Elliott. So we can have them police that and enforce those signs. So
I want to just be clear that we already do that.
I know we do, Michael. I just like to reiterate it for people who either aren't seeing it or they don't feel like they see it enough. I know our police are out there and they are monitoring all these things. So anyway.
Issued quite a few tickets, but it's all state park related.
Right. Okay. I think that's it for our priority project updates. Now moving on to town manager report. Michael, Pond Street.
Yeah, Pond Street is moving along. They did have some issues and some current concerns with details. I believe that that has been worked out, so that project is still moving forward. We do expect bids to come in for the project in September still. So hopefully that will stay on track.
So the work that people are currently seeing is Eversource doing their updates on different things before the actual road project, so that we then don't have to dig up the roads again. So the actual reconstruction of 126 will be starting next spring.
Correct.
Just to be clear. Okay. Eversource land court decision.
All right. I think a few people are staying on for this one. I don't know. I could be wrong. Might be for the micro enterprise grant. So it's well known by now. I think if you've been paying attention to the news or any of our social media pages, that we were actually successful in land court in arguing our case that Eversource only has the legal right to have one pipe in the ground, whether we're calling it pipe, pipeline, whatever. They can only have one of those, which is certainly exciting. The land court judge, Judge Vey, issued a very, I think, strongly worded decision. I think that was very clear. I don't think there could be any misinterpretation of what he was trying to say. When I talked to Brian after they had their hearing with the judge, I will have to say that Brian felt really good, cautiously optimistic, as we like to say, about how things went. But, Brian always uses the phrase, he's won cases he should have lost and has lost cases he should have won. And needless to say, no matter how good a case we have, it's still Eversource. So it was great to find out that we took on the corporate giant, and at least for this round, came ahead victorious. So just a couple of, I think, important dates that are public that people will be interested in. So the EFSB, the Energy Facilities Siting Board, which is also hearing a permit application related to this project, has required both Eversource and the town to submit briefs outlining what this new decision means for our respective parties and how we plan to proceed. So that will be on the 12th. And then also August 20th is the last day that Eversource has to appeal the decision of land court. And an appeal would take probably anywhere from 8 to 24 months. So that's that.
Okay, good. This is, it's not, as I said a little earlier, it's, the first steps, and there's still stuff going on, and we just got to keep pushing forward. So thank you for that update. CDBG micro enterprise grant, the 4 million, not the 4,000.
Yes, $4,950,000. I just want to be clear that that money does not all go to Ashland businesses. It's a regional grant application, and we are, the lead community. We receive the money, and we dispense of it according to what the application guidelines said. We've talked about this before. The only reason I'm bringing it up now is that DHCD is getting delayed a bit on some of the regulations associated with this. And so if businesses were expecting to see it, in August, it's probably going to be more like September before they see the application and the guidelines according to this. One really neat thing I just want to talk about as we were talking about the administration of this grant is, we felt that this was a really good opportunity to really kind of walk the walk when we talk about racial equity and things like that. So there's actually a conversation about setting aside a certain number of these grants in each community for women and minority-owned businesses. So we've got to get 22 other communities to agree to that, or convince DHCD to make that a requirement for every grant that they've issued. So, but I'm glad to see that we're taking that on.
And I would think they would, because there's been a lot of discussion at the state level of supporting minority and women-owned businesses, not only now, but in the past. So hopefully that'll be something that we can get the other communities to agree on. Nice. Thank you for that work.
Yeah, good work,
Any other
Michael.
questions or comments?
None.
Okay.
So it's just a COVID update. We're continuing to see an uptick in our probable cases. Not a huge acceleration of the numbers, but certainly an uptick nonetheless. We're going in the wrong direction. So people just need to stay vigilant. They need to stay vigilant whether they're in their homes and, they're having people over, or whether they're going into public spaces, going into crowds. We don't want to find ourselves in a place where we have to shut things down again, because that would just be devastating to the economy and people's health and lives, of course. So be vigilant, folks.
Okay. And then the Housing Assistance Program.
Yeah, so this is the program that Emma Snellings has been administering and working with the trust on, but I'm going to turn it over to Jen. She can give you an update on, where some of the specifics are related to that.
Sure. So Emma has been working really hard. It's been just about a month now that we opened the application process. It is a rolling application, so we'll continue to take applications throughout the next several months. To date, I believe we have received 10 or 11 applications, and that is both for rental assistance and folks that are receiving or asking for mortgage assistance. We were able to work with many of them. They may not be eligible just yet because they were receiving unemployment benefits, and so they may be more eligible, meet the eligibility requirements in the next coming months. So there's a lot of back and forth and dialogue between applicants and Emma, as well as our human services, making sure that we're doing coordination. So we've processed 2 applications, and there are a few that we're working with applicants to get additional information and work through the eligibility review.
Okay.
As we move forward, so we will work with the trust. A few things have come up that we didn't think about in terms of sort of people's employment opportunities as it relates to available childcare. And so we're trying to make sure that we have a fair and equitable way to look at that, so we can help as many people that we can with this funding.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that update. Any questions from any of the board members on that? I had a great conversation with Emma about it. It was nice to hear it, and that things are moving forward with that. So thank you for that update, Jen.
Yeah, shout out to Emma, certainly. And,
Yeah,
You're doing great work.
Yep.
She is. We're very happy with her with the Affordable Housing Trust and the work that she's been doing for us. Great job.
Good. Okay, that leads us into board reports. We're going to start backwards tonight. Steve, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just a couple things I do. This has kind of become an annual rant for me, and it's related to the state park and what happens at the state park, and the amount of resources that our public safety responders apply to the state park. Particularly it's obviously it's during the summer, during peak times, and unfortunately the state has not funded or seen fit to fund sufficient resources to manage some of the issues that exist at the state parks, and realize that we have basically 1.5 state parks within Ashland, because our first responders respond to Ashland State Park and to Hopkinton State Park. But one of the really glaring problems that exist is at the boat landing on Spring Street, and has very limited parking. and gets very, very busy during peak times. So consequently, there are people cars actually lined up along Spring Street. Now, I'm sure most of you know Spring Street is a scenic road. It's very narrow. It's got a big bend in the road where the boat landing is, and there are times where they're queued up 6 vehicles in a row waiting to get into the parking lot, waiting for somebody to leave so the next car can come in. So it presents all kinds of potential chaos and pressures on our public safety component. The other issue that happens is people start to park on a street like Olive Street. Again, another scenic road. We've had to put no parking signs. We've put caution tapes. There's been a number of, and Michael, I think you've got some documentation in terms of the number of calls that our public safety folks have had to respond to, both within the park and outside of the park. And, again, it's always, when I jokingly say this is my annual rant, well, it is, because we react to this. We don't, we should be having this conversation in January in anticipation. And, particularly with COVID-19 going on, and also the weather that we've had, the state parks are heavily used. And, it's not a question of denying access to the parks. I think it's very important that folks have access to that. Many people can't afford to go away. And so this is their basically staycation. So, I know we've had some contact with our legislative team, but, I think we need to start putting more pressure on DCR to, put some resources to these facilities, at least in peak times. And I think they need to evaluate. And Joe, I know you've talked about this in the past, about the boat landing and the fact that they're missing an opportunity to make some money there. And I think they need to manage that better. And I think they need to manage it within the main entrance of the state park, rather than at this small boat landing area. Now, I'll also say that there was quite a bit of money made in capital improvements at Hopkinton State Park this year. So DCR does fund, they're funding capital projects. I think what they need to do is start funding operational projects as well. So that's my yearly rant, and I'll leave it at that. So that's number one. Number two, I just wanted to extend best wishes to Rob Shearer if he's awake and watching. I hope everything's all right, and we'll talk tomorrow and check in on you. And then the last item on my list is I just wanted to start the notification that the Dragonfly Festival is going to occur this year. It's going to be virtual, and we're in the process of we've partnered with WACA to do a virtual festival. We've got it's going to be very different. We're going to have a much more diverse and eclectic group of performers than we typically would have at a live event. So it should be pretty neat, and hopefully it's going to be over 3 days actually, and September 10th through September the 12th. And we've allocated an hour and a half for each day, the days of programming. So I'm sure I'll remind everybody, more than once as we move forward towards September. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what Steve had to say with respect to the state park. This has been something that I've been saying for the last several years. At the last 2 years ago now, at one of the EFI fundraisers, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Jack Lewis extensively about the missed opportunities that the state and the DCR is missing by not putting the boat ramp inside the park itself at Ashland State Park. by the dike area there. There is a rear parking lot that they could utilize. There's like it's 40 yards from the water edge itself, and they can make a beautiful boat ramp. People could park there, put their boats in, take their cars back up to the parking lot, and they could enjoy the entire reservoir. It would be away from the swimming area, so you don't have to worry about swimmers and boats, clashing with one another. It's on the dike side, and they'd be making money. In the meantime, nothing's happening, and it's causing a problem at the park. This past weekend, when we drove by, there was a DCR vehicle there. The officer was among 20 to 30 people, and I felt a little worried about the safety of that officer, because they're actually like surrounding him because he was writing tickets, and it didn't look right. So I just stood by and yelled out if he was okay, and he gave me the high sign, and that was fine. But a lot of that stuff could be avoided if they took the time to assess their needs. The other issue was the community building in front of the entrance to the Ashland State Park. And I talked to Mike and Jen about this a couple of days ago, that if the attendant at the state park could move his area up to where the drive around is for the parking lot, he could collect the monies for those vehicles that are utilizing the state park there, or those residents who don't want to pay and park in the community center. Now, I counted 110 cars on Saturday and 122 cars on Sunday in the parking lot of the community center. Now, granted, it was a beautiful day. It was a hot weekend, and everybody would utilize it. And I could see the number of people walking up the lot, the hill area from the state park, and they had their dogs, so they were dog walkers as well. But it's unfortunate that they're losing that type of revenue. The only thing I could think of, if we are able to block off with a chain the parking lot to the Warren Woods, why couldn't we block off the parking area to the rear area of the community center where it's gravel on Saturdays and Sundays to alleviate that from happening? And they would have to go into the park to park.
Or they'd park at the front part of the community center.
They would, but or the other thing that I suggested to Mike and Jen was to hire a team, someone that was reliable, an older team that was looking for some, quick coin, to collect $5 to $10 to park there throughout the day. I mean, if you have 110 cars per day, Saturday and Sunday, that's 210 cars. That's close to $1,000 a weekend. Yep. And you're paying him or her 220 something, or that. So you're making money, and that money could go towards youth activities or whatever, because it's part of the it could be part of that goal. But just, you have to think out of the box, and I'm known for thinking out of the box. Sometimes I get thrown out of the box, but it's these are the things that you have to do. But the state really needs to apply. I mean, they put $1 million plus several years ago when Governor Patrick was governor, and they opened up the park that time. I know Steve was there, and I happened to be there to welcome the governor there and opening up that whole new facility. They put $1.5 million. Within a month, the place was a disaster because they didn't have anybody maintaining that park. It was destroyed. Well, that's $1.5 million. They could have given it to us. We could have used it very nicely.
Wait, where did they spend $1.5 million at the Ashland State Park?
Yeah, several years ago when they revamped the whole park, they did the whole building, bathroom area, that whole.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they did the beachfront. They took care of the beachfronts. They put a new ramp in for the folks in the water to go into the water. So that was all done, and it came close to about $1.5 million. It might have been 1.25, but
yeah,
it was over $1 million that they put into it. And within, like I said, within a short time, it had been literally destroyed because nobody was maintaining it.
Yeah,
or patrolling it. So, yeah, it is a problem, and I do agree. And like Steve said, We have 1.5 parks. 85% of Hockington State Park is in the town of Ashland. So we have to respond to any and every call that's beach related. Be it a medical, be it an argument, be it a fight. And believe me, when the heat is on and people have been drinking and having a good time, those aren't two good mixes for people to relate with one another. Tempers do flare. So, and then we end up having to deal with it. So that's all.
So
that's all
Michael, do you have numbers available to us tonight on the calls into the state park, or is that something you're going to bring to the next meeting?
So I don't have them consolidated or aggregated, but I'm going to be sending a memo to DCR, and I'll be CCing our legislative delegation too, with that information as well, and saying, you know, I agree. This year has been worse than ever, and I don't know if it's because COVID closed a lot of the surrounding state parks and forced people to go here. But it's certainly not, it's not appropriate, not sustainable.
Okay.
I just have 2 other quick things, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
The other one, it has to do with the Ashland Day Committee. We're doing an annual summer fundraiser. Even though Ashland Day is not going to go on this year, we're still fundraising for the following year. And our sweet native corn is being sold at Lucky Farms again. We get the okay to do that. It's picked fresh every day, and it's in the store by 10:30, 11:15. And we appreciate the many residents who come by and pick it up. I know that Pi says we can't keep the corn in the coolers fast enough, so we're averaging about 3 bags a day, which is close to 4 dozen each bag. So
Great.
that's a lot of corn.
I've heard it's pretty good.
It's very good.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Take it from me. And the last thing, I would like to send my condolences to the DeLuca family. John DeLuca, who was first district clerk at Framingham District Court, passed away this past weekend at age 70. And John was an unbelievable individual. He was very fair. He was very just. And he knew when a person needed a break, and he would give it to them. But he also knew if someone needed a boot in the pants, he would give them that as well. So my condolences to the entire family. And John, you'll be greatly missed, and a person who will never be able to be replaced. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that, Joe. Brandy?
So I just wanted to give a quick update on what is happening with the Ashland Public Schools reopening plan and some of the decisions and things that are happening on that end. So as you may be aware, the state has granted schools the ability to shorten the school year by 10 days in order to give teachers and districts the ability to do more planning up front. So the school committee voted to change the school calendar for this upcoming year. So the first day of school will actually be Monday, September 14th. They're also changing the start times for all the schools because transportation is going to be a huge factor in the reopening plan. So there will be different start times for the different schools so that the kids can have enough time to clean between the bus drivers can clean between routes and get the kids to school safely. So Mr. Adams has submitted an initial plan to DESE, but he's going to be unveiling the whole entire plan once it's approved as of August 10th. So what we're anticipating is 2 options for families. One, which is the Ashland Online Academy, which will be full-time remote, that parents can sign their children up to do a full-time remote program for periods of time. So they're not committing to the whole year, but they are definitely committing to I don't know if it'll be 6 months or similar time frame, but that's going to be one option for parents. And the other option will be a hybrid model. And that model will allow students to be in person at a 50% capacity 2 days a week with a day of cleaning in the middle. and then the other students would be in person the last 2 days of the week. And so basically in person 2 days, remote 3 days is what the students will have. I know many of you guys were on the tour of the Ashland Public Schools that Mr. Adams had put together. I think that was a real eye-opening experience for me, having a child in the public schools and knowing that as a parent, you want your child to be in school, but I think all of us, at least I'm thinking that you're thinking the same way. Once we were in the schools and we saw what the distancing would look like to be to have full enrollment in person with 3 feet apart, to me that gave me anxiety. So I think it was an eye-opening. It was a good exercise to go through, to tour the different buildings and facilities and see what Mr. Adams and the team are contending with as far as making schools safe to reopen. So like I said, the plan will be unveiled right around August 10th. But Mr. Adams and the team have been putting in a lot of hours, a lot of work into making this the best decision for our kids and to make it a safe environment for staff and teachers and all of our students as well. So so I just wanted to give an update on that. And also just, I know it wasn't on our agenda, but we've been hearing lots of stuff in the news about Triple E this year. I know last year we had a lot of concerns about Triple E. So I just wanted to make sure people were aware that that this is something that they should be aware of again for this year, and to take precautions as we're all outside a lot more. So wear your long sleeves, wear your bug repellent, and just stay safe, and just keep that in mind as well as you're outside after dusk. So and that is it. That's for me.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. Yeah, it's we're still dealing with COVID, and now we have Triple E to think about. And yeah, I have 2 things that I attended, and then just a couple other thoughts. So graduation, class of 2020 had their outdoor graduation on the field on Sunday. An hour. They did it in an hour. None of the scholarships were done. They talked to the kids that were speaking. So the class president spoke, valedictorian, salutarian. They all spoke, but very short. One performance, and they did it very well. It was nice to see, and it was nice to know that they finally got their graduation ceremony. And then back on the 23rd of August, I had a Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting where everyone was talking about how they were doing their town meetings. A couple of them were about to be doing them outside, and Holliston had just had theirs, and it was inside, socially distanced. So, we weren't the only ones to make that decision to go inside. And again, with open meeting, with being an open town meeting that anyone can come, it's hard to do it online. And then, just a couple of precautions, make sure you're still wearing your masks. The other thing I would remind people is speed is always an issue here in town, but there's a lot more people out walking, and there's a lot of people who are not staying on the sidewalk because if they're walking and someone's coming toward them, that they're moving to the other side of the street. And we have many streets in town that do not have sidewalks on both sides of the street. So just be aware for the walkers out there, slow down a little bit, especially on some of these busier streets. More people are out there. So let's be kind to our walkers. And then the last thing is, if you are living on this side of town, the 2-way stop sign at the intersection of Fruit and Elliott is now in place. Unfortunately, I think I might have heard an accident already there. So what that means is if you are coming from the Holliston area or Chestnut Street, and you're going toward Shaw's, there is a new stop sign at that intersection. So Fruit Street has to stop, and heading east on Elliott, you have to stop. Coming from Shaw's, heading west, you don't have to stop. So this is the stop sign that we approved probably about a month ago. It is now in place. What that means, for people who aren't sure, is that whoever gets to the stop sign first, if you're on Fruit or Elliott, if I'm on Fruit and I get there and someone's coming from Elliott, I have the right of way. If I'm coming from Elliott and I get there before the person on Fruit Street, I have the right of way. The thing to remember for both of those cars is people coming from the other side of Elliott don't have to stop. So, it's a new configuration, so please be aware. I have to say, when I crossed the street there this morning, I did feel a little safer because I was in the crosswalk and I knew the people coming on Elliott Street had to stop. So from that perspective, I felt much safer, and we do have a lot of people walking there, not only during the school year, but all year long. So, and that is all I have. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, Steve. What?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. If I can get a second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you to all of those who hung in there. We appreciate it. Again, if you ever have thoughts, comments, make sure you reach out to us. We are all available. Have a great rest of your week. And we do have a couple of extra meetings, so be aware of that. And thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Kinsman,
Aye.
Vignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. That wraps us up just before 9 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great rest of your night.